What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the Alto again, and this time we got round 3 with Peter of Hypocrisy and Pain. It is so great to be able to talk with you again. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Yeah. How you doing? Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. I remember every interview you and I did like it was yesterday. The first time I was talking to you, we were promoting Pain. There wasn't really a new Pain album yet. We were just talking about some new singles, and then we were talking about Worship for our second interview for Hypocrisy.
Yeah, exactly.
But now we finally got a brand new Pain album, I Am, which is absolutely kick-ass. Like, I just gotta say, with Don't Wake the Dead to Not For Sale to Revolution, I've always just found this to be such a unique project. Where do you feel that, because first off, this is the first full-length Pain album since we got Coming Home in 2016, so was there sort of a vision behind the making of this album? Was there sort of like a goal or a message or something that you wanted to convey, or was it, let's just make a Pain album and see what comes into place?
Well, first of all, after I was done with these standalone singles in April of 21, Party in My Head and Give Me Shelter, I started to, really getting into the thought of, okay, let's make a new album. And so I do what I always do. I go back to the latest album, listen right through from the beginning to the end, and then I was sitting going like, damn, this was sleepy. So I guess I needed some more tempo and more distortion, more industrial feeling, more etchiness and things like that. So I actually wrote Push the Pusher right away after I listened through it, because I felt I needed more, go back to the more industrial, more pumping shit, Yeah. So sometimes you overdo things, when you're going to change something. Oh, I don't want it this way. And then you do it totally the opposite way. But I try to stay within, I have no boundaries. Pain is about experiment and trying to write different things that I never did. So basically when I do things like go with the flow, for instance, the start of the song, it goes straight on the vocals, for example. And when you have a bass and drums only going, and you're going like, what? How the hell am I supposed to sing on this? I'm a death metal singer. So it always brings me challenge with all these things. It takes a while to figure out how to sing on a verse on a certain song and things like that. So I really try to push myself as a singer when it comes to different characters in the vocals, and also try to sing as good as I can, of course. So that goes hand in hand with trying to broaden my views of, let's say, I would say just to take everything a step forward when it comes to be able to write different kind of music. So, for me, it's always an adventure. Trust me.
Every time I listen to a Pain or a Hypocrisy album, or even the work that you've done with Bloodbath or your previous projects, Lindman, I think it's always an adventure. Like, that's what I think. I think you have a very adventurous voice and a very adventurous vision. Now, I've spoken with a lot of musicians who sing in like death metal bands, like, speaking with At the Gates and In Flames, and a lot of them have like influences completely outside of the genre. You clearly take a lot of inspiration it's clear that like, has industrial music, whether it will be Nine Inch Nails or Ministry or Skinny Puppy or any of those bands, have they played just as much of an influence on you as heavy metal music has?
Nope.
Really?
To be honest, after 3 or 4 albums, then people started to introduce me into like old Ministry and things like that. Or actually, I got into it a little bit more, because in the beginning, the whole plan was really to, from the beginning, to do Goa trance music. But my sounds were so shitty, so I started putting on distorted guitars on that. And that's actually how I started the Pain stuff. And that's how it got its style, or whatever you want to call it, to try to blend over the shitty keyboard sounds. So first album ended up becoming just a heavy metal album, I would say. second album became what I had in mind for the first album. So I was always after myself on what I had in mind. So
is that why?
But nowadays it's much easier. I got a little bit more hang on things. So the last 10 years feels like I'm starting to handle that as well. So.
What is it? Is that why maybe the second Pain album was called Rebirth? Because it seems like you sort of like found what you wanted it to be. Was that the reason? That's what it was called.
That was supposed to be the first album in my mind, but yeah, I didn't know how. And that when I don't know how to do things, that kind of triggers me to try it.
Well, I
try to do it as good as I want, and till I'm happy, then I can leave it alone, and then I can move on.
Well, that first Pain album with Breathe and Greed and Don't Let Me Down, I mean, that has great memories on it too. I wouldn't sell that first album too short, but I do think that Rebirth has its own like essence of I found myself. This is what Pain is supposed to be. Is that also the meaning behind this new album, I Am? Is that why you wanted to call it that? Does it almost feel like that's who you really are introducing yourself? Because I feel like with Hypocrisy, you're expressing like a lot of stories and concepts maybe outside of your personal life or more theories or more certain visions. So would you say that Pain is more personal?
Yeah. And like I said, it's not just a job. It's a fucking adventure when you write, So that can take me anywhere, and that's what the whole idea from the beginning was to not be stuck in a frame. So first album it's a different kind of band, put it that way. But I like some of the songs, definitely. But the next one was really what was the first one in mind.
Depending on Go on.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to ask. You first.
So when I had the Rebirth done, and it brought some success in Europe and things like that, and then company was like, "Yeah, really good, yeah." But now I'm going to do something different, and that was Nothing Remains the Same. And what I meant with Nothing Remains the Same is like it's not going to be like what was past. So I tried to push the envelope a little bit further as well. Normal bands who has a success with an album, they would probably repeat themselves in sounds, new songs, but in the same genre and things. I went totally different. So like I said, this is just me exploring things.
Depending on, well, first off, you exploring things, being that Pain, I don't want to say it's a band, it's not a solo project, but being that it is so personal, sometimes ourselves are like the most dangerous subject matter to find. When you're lost in your own head and you're constantly facing your own demons or your own trials and own tribulations, and the project being called Pain, has the songwriting process been just as deteriorating sometimes for you as it can be cathartic in a way? Like has the creative process also been a means of almost internal destruction too?
Well, I mean, nothing comes easy, put it that way. And sometimes you get stuck in one song for a long time, and it's hard to put it aside and just leave it for a little bit and then move on to something else. I'm more stubborn than that. So I'll just sit and go like ADHD, crazy. And eventually I get it as close as I can. And if I'm happy enough, then it will pass, put it that way.
Depending on what you're singing about, whether it is the concepts that we hear in the fourth dimension or in Virus or in Worship, or versus the stuff that's in I Am or Rebirth, etc., does it maybe resonate with you differently when you're revisiting that material and you're performing it? Does it almost feel like you channel a different energy into the music depending on what the music is about?
Yeah, I mean, since the career has been over 30 years, and yourself, if you think about how was I thinking 30 years ago, and that kind of reflects in the music for me when I listen to old albums and stuff. Oh, I was thinking like that those days and blah, blah, blah. So it really represents how you are during that process of making the album, I believe.
Yeah,
I mean, some people maybe are more robotic. You know, they go, "Oh, it's going to be death metal album, so I got to think death metal." But it's not the case for me, unfortunately.
Well, death metal in itself is a very broad. Like I feel like there is very few bands that sing like Hypocrisy in a way where like there's. I've always said that Hypocrisy was a thinking man's metal band in general because of the thought-provoking nature and the way that we question. The world around us and have these different stories and conspiracies. You have a band like Fear Factory that sings a lot about, artificial intelligence, Cannibal Corpse with their style. But it's not just singing about different stuff, but you are a multi-instrumentalist, and I feel like that your voice is just as signature as your riffs and your songwriting. Do you express a similar side of yourself lyrically and vocally as you do with the guitar, or depending on the instrument, it almost expresses a different side of who Peter is?
I think what you hear is what I like, put it that way. And of course, not to the extent that I feel it's like super professional, but this is, I write what I would like to hear, put it that way. When it comes to the lyrics, with Pain, it gets more personal. With Hypocrisy, there's more about conspiracies, dimensions, you name it, and so there's two different sides of these two bands, I would say.
Have you ever thought about maybe messing with your audience and then putting Pain lyrics over a Hypocrisy song and a Hypocrisy lyrics over a Pain song? That'll be a good.
Yeah, I don't think we should go that far, But I mean, sometimes in the past, maybe they got close to each other, Pain and Hypocrisy, but then, they moved away again, and it's all about your days thinking of writing music.
When it comes to, because I've always said that an artist's catalog is the best example proving on how time is relative. When you revisit material, like if you played a Rebirth song, for example, live, would it put you back in the headspace that you were in 1999? Does it always put you back in that time?
Yeah, many times when I sing lines and stuff, it clicks back in my head. Oh, that's when I was going through this or doing that those days. Even when I stand on stage today singing some lyrics, it definitely brings you back. It's like this diary that girls had, in their teenagers when they're writing down the day things and stuff like that. It becomes a little bit like that with my lyrics with Pain. How my mood is in at that moment.
Yeah, and going back to, like, for instance, circling back to Hypocrisy, for example, like I was a late bloomer with Hypocrisy, full disclosure. The end of Disclosure was my first Hypocrisy album in 2013 is when I started to get into death metal. Then I went back and listened to the whole catalog. So an album like The Fourth Dimension, that doesn't take me back to 94. I was 1 year old at that time. It takes me back to 2013 when I was listening to it. So also, though, with having do you feel that the music and the meaning could develop more context as your fans interpret it in a way? Because I feel like your music is something that fans really like to dive into the meaning as much as the music itself. So does people's own interpretations of it also add meaning and context to the material?
I really don't understand how you mean. What is the question?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Do people's interpretations of it maybe feel like, does that maybe change your perspective on the material? Does that bring new meaning and light to the songs as opposed to when you...
Sometimes like people ask, is this lyric about this? And you go, oh, yeah, maybe it is. But that was not what I meant. Is that how you mean it? Like it becomes fans has a different meaning to the lyrics than I do when I created it. That happens many times.
And I think also that with the Pain catalog, I'm wondering too, because Nothing Remains the Same in Rebirth, I feel like are very much statement driven. Like they showing, I feel like the song titles describe what the material sounds like, but Psalms of Extinction or Cynic Paradise almost gives like a story vibe behind it as well. I mean,
Yeah.
How is there a lot of forethought into song titles and song and meaning before you pick up an instrument?
Uh, no, I think the only one that got like that in that kind of way was Party in My Head. My friend said, "Why don't you make a song that's called Party in My Head?" And bingo, and then I started. So it can happen in many different ways. But that's the only time I really got this kind of thing from someone else. But many times I get influenced by listening to radio, driving the car, top 40 shit or whatever. And it just, something sticks in my head, and I need to get it out somehow.
Yeah.
So
This is a question that I like to sort of debate with different artists. When it comes to inspiration, can you really seek that out? Can you go looking for inspiration, or do you just have to let it strike you? Do you just have to let the creative energy hit when it does?
yeah, later years, I don't try to force myself to write music. Even if I have some melodies in my head, I usually go, I'll take it later. But in the past, as soon as I got a melody, I just took the acoustic guitar, tried to figure out what the melody was, recorded on this memory thing, that doctors has and talk to, blah, 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 blah. So I had that. And, as soon as I had enough riffs to put it together, then it became a song. That was a little bit how the first couple of Hypocrisy albums came about. Me with ideas in my head and just get the acoustic guitar and put it down on this memory thing. And after that, you start puzzling things together. What is intro, what is verse, and blah, blah, blah. But nowadays, if I get a melody, sometimes I can write the song in my head because I know what I want to add to the melody. What kind of guitars, what kind of riffs under it, what kind of beat the drums should do, and things like that. So, nowadays I just get a vision. Sometimes it's a whole song, sometimes it's just a melody, and then I go to the studio and start build around this melody, and then I just take it step by step. What's going to happen after this part now? You know what I mean? And you just keep on building.
In terms of the evolution of who you are as an artist, can an artist really dictate their own evolution? Is that something that you have control over, or does evolution just happen naturally and you can't really?
No, I think you can dictate that as much as you want because you're the boss and over your things. So if you get influences here or there that goes this way or if it goes that way, I guess that's just fate. If people like it or not, it's for me. It just go anywhere where it wants to, and as long as I approve it, that it feels comfortable and sounds good and thing, then I keep it.
And that's honestly the best way to go. I feel like sometimes.
Yeah.
Do you think that I feel like sometimes artists have too much pressure to evolve? I think the concept of we must evolve, we must improve. I feel like you obviously want to grow. You don't want to stay where you are, but at the same time, I think that there's a lot of pressure to grow too, and kind of like you don't get to experience much of the now when you're trying to progress so frequently.
Yeah, but also, I mean, it's so individual, I guess, how people think. I mean, I'm just one songwriter out of millions, and this is how I think, and other people may think totally different, and still they can create things. And of course, everybody gets pressure, but I don't see myself that high up on the totem pole to have any pressures. I don't give a shit. I never gave a shit, and I will keep on not giving a shit. So that takes the pressure off because the only pressure I have is myself. I pressure myself to make things better because I want to hear it better. I want to hear it becomes better. So, like I said, it's very individual.
And that's a very, very beautiful way of saying it too, because I like sometimes people say I don't give a shit, and it kind of sounds like that they really don't care. But there is an art to not giving a shit. I mean, a book that came out recently, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. It's very, very helpful. And there was one final bonus question I wanted to ask, because we talked about Hypocrisy, we talked about Pain. There's an anniversary of one album that I wanted to talk about in particular, and that's Nightmares Made Flesh from Bloodbath. Just 20 years of that. I'm just wondering what the thought was behind the making of that particular album, because being that Bloodbath has consisted, you know, that's the freaking Swedish Olympics, I call that band. So what was the sort of forethought behind the making of that album when you came into Bloodbath, and what was the different creative mindset with that?
It's very simple. I mean, they had everything done already. Okay. Lyrics, they had the music done, but Michael couldn't do this album. He was busy with Opeth, I think. So Don called me up, because we've been friends for a long time. It's like, hey, you want to sing on this Bloodbath album? And I'm like, what the hell is Bloodbath? And he's like, well, we did some cool stuff, like old-fashioned death metal kind of feeling, like Dismember, Entombed, Swedish stuff. And I'm like, yeah, sure, send me a demo and the lyrics. So I just went down there for 2 days and, I don't know, just spit it out. And that's how it is.
Was there ever any touring or any shows off with Bloodbath at that time, or?
No. I mean, they asked me if I wanted to come up and sing on. They played at Wacken and things like that, and I was never really comfortable. So, I mean, I'm a person who really likes to practice together then, you know, and take some time and, you know, not just go up and just start screaming, you know. I think it has to have some finesse to it, and it never really happened, unfortunately. So
okay, but I was always curious about that album. I think it's a very underrated piece of work, and glad I got to ask you about it. I didn't think much of it while I was recording it, but afterwards, when it was done, I was like, damn, this is a fucking good album. Yeah, it's
you know, it just hit me afterwards when it was done. When I listened to the demo, it was like, yeah, this is old-fashioned Swedish death metal, no problem, you know. And afterward, when it was done, I was like, yeah, this is fucking good.
Yeah, thank you. So before we go, I want to thank you so much, as always, for coming on the show, and for always just a thought-provoking and in-depth conversation. That's always very inspiring. Is there just anything else with Hypocrisy or Pain that you would like to release or promote?
I would say we're working right now to go to North America really hard with Pain. So we were working on September. Now I guess they're going to move it over to try to get it done in November. So we just want to go out and play the new album for people, you know, and have a good time. So, that's what I'm hoping for, to go to North America now and, show people what it's about, because it's kind of different live. We do a lot of crazy shit on stage. So
the more I listen to Pain's catalog, the more I'm wondering what a live show would be like. So
it's insane.
I bet.
We have a lot of fun. You know, we try to put in some special stuff here and there, you know, to make it, you know, so it's not, you know, you're standing there for 1.5 hours and nothing really happens. You know, except you playing the music and having fun with the people. But we try to do a little bit more than that.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Peter.
Thank you.
Everybody. Peter of Hypocrisy and Pain. Be sure to check out I Am. This is Alex from Heavy New York. We will see you next time.
Oh, yeah. See you soon.